Hi, everybody. Eric Maurer here with Neudorf USA. I want to thank Lindsay and all the folks at Heritage for your support and for this opportunity. Very grateful for it. A lot of exciting things going on within Heritage Professional Products Group, as I know you know a lot better than I on that end. But for sure, we're really excited to be a part of that. So without further ado, I'm going to hop right into this. Those that, oh, Lindsay, how do you want to handle questions, if at all, given our time? Okay, I'll just keep on going then. I hope you all can hear me. Just want to make sure here. So for those of you that don't know anything or much about Neudorf, we've been around for about 170 years, founded in 1854 by a guy by the name of Wilhelm Neudorf. And in 1959, Neudorf was bought by Rudolf Lohmann. So really, this was a second opportunity for us to grow the business in biopesticides and also natural and organic products. This has always been the case. For all intents and purposes, we're fifth generation, still privately held, family-owned company. We have a global presence, but more specifically North America. Our commercial ag operations headquarters for North America is located in Victoria, British Columbia. We have an office in New York that handles kind of administrative, HR, stuff like that. And then there's two sales reps here in the US, myself in Annapolis, Maryland, and we have my colleague Morgan Silva, who's out in Central California. And we do have a specific R&D facility in Victoria as well. So Neudorf, we have, biopesticide, natural, softer chemistry, however you want to call it, products for the professional and consumer markets. You'll see us in your Home Depots and big box stores on that end, also in Ace Hardware and your independent garden centers. Just look for the sunflower logo on the back of the label. We have a sustainable facility with its own hydroelectric power source in Germany, in Emmertal, in the headquarters. And there, so we do walk the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk. And Heritage Professional Products Group is Neudorf's primary distributor of biopesticide products in professional pest control and lawn care markets. So again, this gets to my initial comment on how grateful I am that you're providing me with this opportunity. So we're going to talk about today. I got a bunch to get through, so get in and hang on. There's a lot of misinformation and confusion, maybe too strong of a word, but a little bit of a confusion on some of these bullet points. We're going to talk just real briefly on what is a pesticide, how is it defined, an introduction to biopesticides, how they're different or similar to pesticides, what are minimum risk or 25B pesticides, and what does OMRI listed mean? Organic listed. And then I'm going to get into a few product discussions. I'm not going to spend as much time on that, but I do want to introduce you to some of Neudorf's products that fall into these categories. That will be a good opportunity, hopefully, for some of you to have an idea at the end of this discussion, have an idea of where it might fit into your business plan. So just one slide on what is a pesticide. So it's really any substance or mixture of substances intended for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any pest. So really what it comes down to is if a pesticide label makes a claim, then it's got to be registered by EPA. It's pretty simple as that. It really doesn't get much beyond that. But it's also makes a claim of this first bullet for killing or mitigating any pest, but also intended for use as a PGR, a defoliant, or a desiccant. So if it makes any of these claims, it's got to go through an EPA registration process, which is pretty extensive, as many of you know. Biopesticides are really a subset of pesticides, and these are certain types of pesticides derived from natural materials. They're still making a claim, but they're derived from natural materials. In 2016, this is just going to show you the growth, and this is kind of an underlying theme of this talk here, is the growth of biopesticides in this market and in the US and globally. So in 2016, there were 299 registered biopesticide active ingredients and 1,401 product registrations. And you can see in just 4 years, I've got almost another 100 active ingredients registered. So we really are seeing exponential growth in this biopesticide market. So really, what is the difference other than what the active ingredient or what the mode of action is for biopesticide? What's the difference? Well, they are naturally occurring substances, as noted. Now, really, these three criteria have to be met for it to be registered by EPA's biopesticide division, as opposed to EPA's registration division, typical where traditional conventional chemistry is registered. And there are benefits to going through the EPA's biopesticide division. So to go through that route of registration, that route to market, they have to be naturally occurring substances. They have to have a non-toxic mode of action to the target pest, and they have to have a history of demonstrating minimal toxicity and exposure to humans in the environment. If it can meet these three criteria, and there's an initial phase, initial phase for them to determine, for EPA to determine whether it does meet these requirements, then it goes through this path to registration. What I want to say here real quick here is that I alluded to the benefits of biopesticide requirements, and really what that comes down to is there's a cheaper, for lack of better words, there's less of a fee for registration. There's typically less data requirements required for registration, so there's less required as far as costs associated with generating data to support the registration. And there's usually a shorter time frame for registration, so you can get a quicker path to market. Okay, so that's pesticides real quick. That's biopesticides real quick. So why doesn't everybody use biopesticides, right? I mean, well, there's a lot of confusion and misinformation out there, clearly. That they don't work, they're too expensive, there's a lack of awareness, and there's a lack of education out there really on biopesticides. Biopesticides work differently, so it takes a little bit more hand-holding to understand expectations and to manage manage expectations in the context of what they do, what they don't do, etc. So these are why you might not use biopesticides, but over time, as you see this demand grow, you'll see that some of these common thoughts aren't necessarily the case anymore, because they do work. They wouldn't be out there. We wouldn't see the growth and demand if they didn't work, right? There has been, these aren't snake oils like in the traditional sense, like that. We're just selling a bunch of stuff that I made in my bathtub last night. That's just not the case anymore. These are legitimate products. And they do have to go through an EPA registration process, which is a very valuable, very valuable process, because it does show that there is support at the manufacturer level to support these products. And let's be honest, nobody's going to sell anything if it doesn't work, because over time it's just not sustainable. So they do work. Manufacturers are developing increasingly efficacious products based on demand from end users. And the research from third parties and universities it's vital to the success of these products, because we need to give end users and you guys something to hang your hat on from the standpoint of having some confidence moving forward in selling these products. So cost is increasingly less of a factor. I'm not saying they're not more expensive than traditional chemistry, because they are in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases. But higher volume based on increased demand does lower the cost of production, right? So we are seeing this mutually beneficial path towards reducing cost and increasing production and increasing demand. As I noted, regulatory costs are less than conventional pesticide counterparts, and many of these decreased costs are passed on to the end user, because in the end, we do want to make sure that these products are as accessible as possible, because it does get to a point where, regardless of whether it's softer chemistry, regardless of how efficacious it works, if it's just too expensive, you're going to have what we call demand destruction, where you're just going to get to a point where that cost is just too much. Awareness and demand is increasing, right? So we have obviously these class action lawsuits, since we've seen over the last several years, got many thinking about, hey, what are we doing? What are we putting out on our properties? What are we putting on our lawns? What are we putting in our our nurseries and our greenhouses, and what are we putting in our garden beds at home? It just got people thinking more so. Legislative restrictions, man, I'm in Maryland. We have Montgomery County, Maryland. There's many other areas around the country. Montgomery County just happens to be the largest as far as the legislative restriction is, at least in the US. But legislative restrictions continue to be put in place. And I know there's many more on the books I've heard at the village, town, and county levels. So that's only going to increase. We're still ahead of the curve on that, I do believe. Managing expectations is critical, as I noted. Biopesticides work differently than conventional products, and this needs to be understood. You know, there's no silver bullet. Biopesticides aren't a silver bullet. Conventional chemistry really isn't a silver bullet in many cases. So it's just important that many of these products, many biopesticide products are order maker products, not necessarily order taker products. So that just needs to be understood. So got to put our money where our mouth is here, right? I've been saying that demand is increasing. So this just shows biopesticide demand by the numbers. You can see the growth. CAGR is compounded annual growth rate. So that is incredible. I wish all our 401ks and our portfolios grew at 14.9%, right? But if you look at 2020, you have a $2 billion. Now this is U.S. North American biopesticide market. So it's not breaking it down versus ag and non-ag. But you just see the growth between 2020 and 2030, 14.9%. That's pretty impressive. That is one resource, researchandmarkets.com. The link is down there if you'd like to take a look at it. But you know, this is also from DataBridge Market Research, shows very, very similar numbers. I mean, this is incredible growth in the U.S., Canada, Mexico. You can see that the demand is there, right? So in the end, it's not too late to get on board the biopesticide bus. It's just not. We're still ahead of the curve here, and that I think the two graphs I just showed you attest to that. When you look at it, we're looking at around this breaks it down by category, but we're around 12% of all pesticide sales in the US are biopesticides. That's incredible. That's legit. And I think it's only going to grow based on the graphs we just showed. Okay. So we're going to jump into minimum risk pesticides here. Some of you may have heard these called 25B or 25B exempt. Now, there is a lot. The reason I bring this up is because this is really important, especially at the state level. There are many state legislative restrictions that allow the use of 25B pesticides, but do not allow the use of EPA registered pesticides. That is a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down because that is, well, I'm just not going to. I just think it's short-sighted. But anyway, that's my opinion. But I think that because there's some misinformation, I just wanted to give you guys an update on what these actually are from the standpoint of just having a knowledge of why they exist and what they are. So FIFRA is the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, which is the federal statute that governs EPA for all intents and purposes. So under this section 25B of FIFRA, US EPA has exempted certain products that contain certain active ingredients and certain inert ingredients from federal registration. So they're exempt from EPA registration. Now, there are certain requirements that have to be met, shocker, that to go down this path or to be exempt from EPA registration. So as I noted, there's 44 active ingredients, okay, that are on this list. And these are identified in the code, in FIFRA. So it's going to be very difficult to change. It's going to be very difficult to take any of them away. It's going to be even more difficult to add them. The inert ingredients also have to be on the list, on an EPA approved list. And there are dozens and dozens of them. There's a lot more of the inert ingredients. And the product label must list all the product's ingredients, both active and inert, which is kind of interesting because EPA additional pesticide, or I'm sorry, just pesticide EPA registered products don't need to list inerts. They just need to list the active. Other label requirements for these 25B products, minimum risk products. The label may not make claims to mitigate organisms that pose a threat to human health. What this really says is, and it continues to say, while claims to mitigate insects that vector disease are allowable, the specific disease that may be vectored may not be stated in the label. An easy way of saying this is like, you can say it controls insects, or I'm sorry, you can say it controls mosquitoes on the label, but you can't say it says controls mosquitoes that cause West Nile virus. So that's a detail. Company name and address, and the label may not contain, must be on the label, and the label may not contain any false or misleading statements. Okay. The reason, so you kind of say, well, who's going to review all this, right? I mean, who's going to review all this? Well, the states still require registration. Most states, at least 40, based on my information, still require registration, and they have various requirements. So many of you, fertilizers kind of fall in this category where EPA does not enforce or register fertilizers, but each of the states do. So as a result of that, there's kind of a mishmash of requirements and label requirements, what needs to be on those labels to be used in the state. The same holds true. It's not quite as bad. It's not as bad with pesticides, or with these 25B pesticides, but it can get messy. So, the challenge there from a manufacturing standpoint and a supply chain, a logistics standpoint, is making sure that these compliant labels are compliant in each of the states. In many cases, what manufacturers will do, based on my experience, is that they'll go to the most restrictive label, and just utilize that label in all the states, which can be kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. It makes it easier to be compliant. And we all know that the cost of non-compliance is much greater than the cost of compliance all day. So that's where it comes down with state-specific requirements. So as a result of this mishmash that I was just alluding to, APCO, the Association of American Pesticide Control Officials, created a 25B working group, and it's been pretty active. I was just looking at the website last week, and the website's right down there if you're interested in checking it out. But it does provide label guidance to help companies comply with these individual state requirements. The issue there, though, is they can come up with more, right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of these work groups. They say, well, wait, maybe we're missing this. We have this. Maybe we're missing this. So. It is helpful, but here, in the end, it's helpful to make sure that we're all on the same page with state-specific requirements and making it easier for everybody to get these minimum risk pesticides into the market. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about OMRI listed. Again, a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation on OMRI listed. OMRI listed for organic use, not OMRI certified. It's a very important distinction. So what is OMRI? It stands for the Organic Materials Review Institute. They are a third-party certifier of agricultural inputs. Now, OMRI is not the only one. There are some state-specific ones. California and Washington are two of the ones that I'm aware of. And this is based on USDA's National Organic Program. These standards, so they are certifying, OMRI is certifying these agricultural inputs based on USDA's National Organic Program. This is independent of EPA registration. For example, you could have a 25B product that is OMRI listed, right? And you could have an EPA registered product, a pesticide or a biopesticide that's not OMRI listed. These are two separate processes. So the National Organic Program, and this is important to note, so that it's a federal regulatory program that develops and enforces consistent national standards for agricultural products. Okay, only agricultural products. There is no standard for inputs. There is no certification or standard for inputs for non-agricultural commodities or use patterns, which is what we get into, which is the professional products group, right? For all intents and purposes, where we're talking about lawn care, we're talking about pest control, et cetera. There's just not a standard for that, which kind of, it evolved. This OMRI list, this OMRI exercise, this OMRI certification kind of has evolved over time, right? It's kind of become its own entity, developed a life of its own. Many of you may or may not remember the Underwriters Laboratory back in the day. Well, it's still around, but the UL listed, where there was certain safety criteria and defined requirements for specific products. And then, the UL, if it was listed, it showed that these products, whether it's like a toaster or gosh, or anything for that matter, that would go through the UL listed process to make sure that they were safe. If we're bringing this stuff into our home, we want to make sure they're safe and that their standards are being met, right? So the OMRI listing is similar to that. So there's a certified organic versus OMRI listed. So there's organic certified and OMRI listed. Now these are different, very different. So agricultural products that are outputs of organic farms can be USDA certified organic. We've all seen these products in our grocery stores, right? We all see the USDA. We all see the logo on the packaging. It carries a lot of weight. It does carry a lot of weight and it's a great marketing tool. Most input products are ineligible for organic certification, right? But OMRI ensures that these inputs, such as pesticides used by farmers, used by process, are OMRI listed, okay? So products are certified organic, inputs are OMRI listed. That's the distinction. So a quick summary of this is that this review process does not certify an input product as organic, but recognizes that it has been found to have ingredients that are safe for organic growing listed. So again, that's the differentiation that I was just discussing in the previous slide. And in the end, there's a comfort level, right? That these inputs have gone through that process, regardless of whether that NOP, that National Organic Program, only reflects agricultural commodities. There's still that comfort level that it has been listed, right? Even though there truly is no standard for non-agricultural commodities, and who knows if it would be different? Maybe less restrictive, maybe more restrictive. We don't know, but at least there's that comfort level that it has been through that process. And again, not all biopesticides are OMRI listed. It's a separate process altogether. That is a very common misconception that EPA kind of does OMRI listing, and it's just not the case. I certainly hope this helps, kind of understand, pesticides 101 from the standpoint of, a pesticide, a biopesticide, 25B, and OMRI. They're all really important classifications, very important classifications. As I noted, some states only require 25B products, so you have to know that. But there still are requirements, even for the 25B products at the state level, for example. OMRI listing is important, but it's not the end all be all that it's OMRI listed, that it's automatically better or worse. It's different for sure. And that specific process that OMRI utilizes to classify inputs as organic or as OMRI listed, it's a very important process, and it is a marketing tool. And for what it's worth, I just hope that you all have a little clearer, have more clarity on what these individual classifications mean. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about some biopesticide product options. Some are OMRI listed, some are not, in lawn care, pest control, and lawn and garden. So the first product I'd like to talk about is Final Sand, which is an herbicidal soap. It's a non-selective, organic, non-selective herbicides. So anywhere non-selective, when you're talking about pavers, sidewalks, bare ground, underneath fence lines, anywhere you don't want something growing, right, in the end. The active ingredient is ammoniated soap and fatty acid. I will say that Neudorf, probably 45 years ago, created fatty acid herbicidal soaps. So Final Sand, that first generation is still being used out in the marketplace. So Final Sand, really, for all intents and purposes, is a second-gen non-selective herbicide. There's a lot of fantastic benefits. Now, Final Sand, again, because of, it's not alone in this category. There are other organic non-selective herbicides. They all work very similarly. and they're all, all very good products. Some features and specs with Final Sand and these other herbicidal soaps. You see results within hours. I mean, this stuff works fast. I've had comments made where, and my own experience, I use it. I'll start in my beds and crack and crevice in the driveway, and the curb sides, for example, getting off the the cracks and crevices. By the time on a nice day, man, if I start in front of the house and I go around the house, by the time I get back to the front of the house, I can already see some activity. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's fun to use, believe it or not. Removes, burns the waxy cuticle of green vegetation, so it's a desiccant for all intents and purposes. One great, 6 of one, half dozen the other, but I think one great benefit of Final Sand is it doesn't move through the soil whatsoever, and it does not activate after a rain event. As soon as it's dry, it's done working. It's a contact herbicide. On the downside, not necessarily a downside, but it is a component of Final Sand and these other herbicidal soaps. Repeat applications may be required on larger weeds. For example, I've seen it, I've used it work on poison ivy, but you have to be super diligent on applications. But my experience is when you use it on smaller, immature weeds, I don't see regrowth. This is an OMRI listed product, doesn't stain, so it's no problem using it on patios or cement, concrete, anything along those lines, fences. Has a broad label, works incredibly fast, and it is a great value. This is just a quick video, a 24-hour time lapse to show you how Final Sand works compared to glyphosate. And this is on YouTube if you just want to go ahead and Google that. But for all intents and purposes, what I just wanted to show here is how fast it does work and what happens to the weed when it dies. It's typical of a desiccant. Turns it like tan brown. But that's just an idea of what you can expect from the use of Final Sand. I'm telling you, it is a fun product to use. Okay, so this is some other use patterns for Final Sand, moss and algae, bare ground application. What's cool about Final Sand, it doesn't affect the woody portion of a plant at all, right? So you can use it for shoots. I've used it to control shoots of a fruit tree, and it won't affect the fruit tree whatsoever. You can see the effect. This cleans up the fence, cleans up the north or south side of that tree. I'm not sure which one that is, but also that bare ground application. It works really well. I love using it. Okay, the second product I'd like to talk about is Fiesta. So to control weeds in turf, you want to use Fiesta. You want to control weeds outside of turf, use Final Sand. Unlike Final Sand, Fiesta is very unique in its particular category. Fiesta's come and gone. It's the #1 herbicide used in Canada, primarily based on legislative restrictions. Fiesta is approved for use in many areas in the US where there are legislative restrictions. Fiesta is approved for use. Now, Fiesta is not OMRI listed. Okay, so this takes a little bit more work to get folks comfortable with its use. And some of what I'm going to go through will help you do that. So it's selective, right? Use it in turf, kills weeds, not turf. So you're going to get broadleaf weeds on this. You're going to get pre or early post-emergent control of smooth crabgrass. You're going to get improved turf color and green up from the iron because it's an iron, the active ingredient in Fiesta is iron. So this is why we're able to call this a bioherbicide. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention real quick is something interesting about when I forgot about that one in the pesticide, the one pesticides, what is a pesticide slide. Is that it's interesting how I read in articles, it says pesticides and herbicides are banned in some jurisdiction. I always found that interesting because an herbicide is a pesticide, an insecticide is a pesticide, right? A molluscicide is a pesticide, a fungicide, you get the idea. Pesticide is the umbrella category, the umbrella term for all these individual pesticides. For herbicide kills a weed, insecticide kills an insect, etc. A pesticide just kills a pest, right? A weed can be a pest. Anyway, that's just an aside. I always thought that was kind of interesting when reading articles. Oh, never mind. Go down that rabbit hole too. So use sites anywhere there's turf. It's got a very broad label. Just as the, I use that final sand time-lapse video. Whoops, I'm gonna go up here. Let's see, hope this, maybe it's not gonna work. Yeah, here it is. So this is a time lapse. You know, what's important about this is to show how Fiesta works. And a couple other things is that it works fast. It is selective, it kills the weeds, no phyto to the turf. And unlike final sand, which turns it, which is more of a desiccant, the mode of action with Fiesta is it causes cell necrosis. It's overdosed on iron. That's really what happens. So it disables the plant cell's ability to breathe, turns the weed black, absorbs more iron than the grass, which makes it selective. Just give you some photographs and photographic evidence of Fiesta working. This, I believe, is Ohio State University data. We had I think this was 2 applications on the right, a check on the left, mostly clover. See a dandelion or 2 in there. And you can see again what happens to the weeds when they die. See a little green up there too, probably from the iron, probably also a little exacerbated by the lack of clover in there. But also that blackness in the turf will go away, even though, you know, we're staring at it, right? Got a picture of it right in front of us, but you know, that is not as apparent as it, you know, a bleached out weed, right, in turf. And again, that's going to go away in about a week or the first mowing. So these are my photographs. So don't shoot the photographer here. I know they're not perfect, but just shows you again how quickly Fiesta works. Final sand works, Fiesta works fast. I mean, it's fantastic how quickly it does work. And again, this is a contact herbicide, just like final sand, kills the weeds, not the turf. But so coverage is important. Okay, coverage is important. It just again shows you how quickly it works. And this is Black Medic. This is up at the University of Guelph Turfgrass Institute, Southern Ontario. This is one application for Black Medic. Fantastic. I mean, this is just great. And again, just want to show you some photographic evidence of how Fiesta does work, that it does work. This is a nice photo. This is a friend of mine, actually. I think he's down in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. But you see, it is selective against with broadleaf weeds in Liriope. I know I have picked those out when I didn't have Fiesta in the garage. So it's going to be selective again with those weeds as well. Again, you see how quickly it works. And I love that lower left picture. You can really see how the weeds are dying off. That may need a second application. I'm not quite sure, but certainly looks better than the picture on the upper left. So Fiesta, no odor. I mean, this stuff is odorless. Kills a wide range of broadleaf weeds, works in wide temperatures. You can get out there a little bit earlier than traditional herbicides. Just like any other herbicide, it works better in warmer temperatures. No question, it does, because you get that absorption. At the top end, also, just similar to other herbicides, if the weed isn't actively growing, Fiesta will not work because it's not going to really absorb that. You know, at higher temperatures, stomatas close up. You know, the plants go into save myself mode and to defer respiration or to slow down respiration, save water. But anyway, also works fast. You saw the results in less than 24 hours. Fantastic product, which is also nice because folks want to see, end users want to see quick results, just where we're at. People and pets can re-enter after the spray dries. This has nothing to do with toxicity. This is because it's an iron-based product. It's blood red. This is to ensure that, you know, the pets or people don't get stained shoes or fur. So in the second and third bullet can apply to turf a week after emergence and can reseed the next day. Fantastic bullets there to facilitate flexibility with whether it's in sports fields where you have to, whether you're trying to regrow grass, whether it's in between the hash marks or around the goal mounts. And also gives you a ton of flexibility in lawn care for fall application because it will not interfere with traditional overseeding programs if you can time it right. I mean, this is just these are just fantastic benefits. Repeat applications may be required on larger weeds, similar to final sand. On very mature weeds, may need a second application. Again, it's a contact herbicide. So really what you're doing here is some people call this chemical mowing, right? What you're doing is, the idea is to kill off all the plant tissue above the soil, right? If that's the case, photosynthesis can't occur and you can't feed the root. So the root will weaken and die, right? So it will indirectly kill the root, doesn't kill it directly because it is not a systemic product, right? Which is why we're able to get away with a caution signal word with Fiesta. And also, when you're looking at the toxicity of Fiesta and FEHEDTA, which is iron chelate, which is the active ingredient in Fiesta, you know, the higher number, is better here. So we're at toxicity category 4. The higher the toxicity, the better. You can see that Fiesta is, the active ingredient in Fiesta is less toxic than several other in the coffee that I'm having right now, the caffeine in the coffee I'm having right now. Aspirin, borax, salt, vinegar. It's very interesting. So it's a non-toxic mode of action, right? As I said, the plant cells in broadleaf weeds specifically, and also in crabgrass, just the nature of the plants, right? They absorb more than turfgrass, which is why we get the selective nature of Fiesta. So real quick, pre-emerge data. I'm not going to ask you to take a look at this so slowly, but just go ahead and listen. All I want to say here is to look at the 2 black arrows. When you're looking at pre-emerge data for the liquid, this is Rutgers data in 2018. All I want to say here is 3 applications of Fiesta works a lot better than 3 applications of corn, or 3 applications of corn gluten. I know that's not saying a whole lot, but I want to also say, and if you look at the red arrow, 1 application of Fiesta had better crabgrass control than 3 applications of corn gluten. So that's just a note. What we're end up going to do here is you're going to get more benefits. You're going to get more benefits from a single application of Fiesta now that we have these data to support the pre-emerge crabgrass control. Post-emergent broadleaf weed control, early post-emergent control of smooth crabgrass up to the 4-leaf stage, turf green up, disease, moss, and algae control. Okay, you're going to get all these benefits from a single broadcast application of Fiesta. So coming up now, we have a Fiesta granular weed and feed. Many of you have probably heard about this. So I'm going to get into this. This is the product here right now. We've got EPA registration December 22. The registrations are pretty much all in place for the priority states. You can imagine what those priority states are. Upper Midwest, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and a couple others here and there. Anticipated availability will be next month, early next month. I think the whole idea is they're going to be putting it in 40-pound bags to start, only 40-pound bags to start. And I'm really hopeful. Gosh, I'm hopeful. Fingers crossed we're going to have these available in 2 weeks' time. It is going to be registered as a weed and feed 801. A lot of the same benefits as the liquid. You know, for all intents and purposes, you know, hindsight's 2020, but the liquid could have been registered as a weed and feed as well. But long story short here is that Canada was the primary market for the Fiesta liquid, and they don't allow weed and feed registrations, believe it or not. So that's pretty much why, you know, in the US we could have done that with the liquid, but it's never happened. So we're doing it with the granular. So the granular, we have 14% sodium ferric EDTA, 8% water soluble N derived from lysine, sodium ferric EDTA, and potassium chloride. That's where the 8 and the 1 are coming from. It's got a small SGN 80. You saw a photograph of that. Then it's an organic water soluble prill. So essentially, when this is applied to wet grass, it solubilizes that prill solubilizes immediately and essentially becomes the liquid. Okay. Now the weight, some questions I've had with this, the weight and the prill size is challenging. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. We're looking forward to learning more about this, is, you know, how it's going to be used in the field, because we've certainly used it and tested it in spreaders, but there's a balance here with the weight that is necessary on the prill for it to fall out of the spreader and spread evenly. And there's also has to be light enough for it to stick to the leaf, right? So there's a very sensitive balance there. We think we've achieved that. So some of the benefits with the granular weed and feed, this 801 greens up turf in 7 days or less, kills weeds, moss, and algae, not turf, works fast, see results in hours, all similar benefits, okay? The rates is we're looking at 3 to 8 pounds per thousand. Standard rate's gonna be 5 pounds per thousand. And just like the liquid as well, a repeat treatment 3 to 4 weeks for best results, okay? This is not uncommon. We do see, you know, there is the potential for regrowth. This is going to be a broadcast application, my thoughts only, whereas with the liquid, you can get away with a targeted application more easily. But I think this is going to, you know, primarily going to be a broadcast application. There's certainly a lot of benefits to this granular formulation on so many levels, right? It puts a lot more folks, I think a lot more of your customers in play with the granular than it did with the liquid. So I just, the primary benefit, the primary thing I want to identify here on this slide is that ensure the turf is wet from dew or water turf lightly before application. This also can obviously, you know, on an irrigated property, won't be as much of an issue. This is going to limit the time though that you can do this. I get it. But this is also not different from any other weed and feed, granular weed and feeds out there. All of them, my understanding, all of them do require to be applied to wet turf. This is just real quick. I was going to show you that take-home message from this slide. This is 2021 white clover. This is the granular. Okay. Couple take-home messages here. There's a rate response, right? Higher the rate, the better the activity, the better the efficacy, which is what we like to see, right? You see it works fast. It works faster than your Scott's weed and feed here, okay? You're seeing that. Scott's weed and feed catches up, no question. But it works as good as Scott's weed and feed, if not better early on. So those are the take-home messages there for white clover, which can be persnickety, can be a real persnickety weed out there. Understood. Pre-emerge data. So this is pre-emerge, real pre-early post, I want to say. It's not a true pre-emerge in a sense because, well, that's another rabbit hole we won't go down. But what I want to convey here is that it works a lot better than corn gluten. And we do have efficacy. So we're not hanging our hats on smooth crabgrass efficacy. This is, you know, we're not saying solely Fiesta is a smooth crabgrass efficacy product. You know, it's not going to be used solely for that product. But this is another great marketing claim. This is in the end, this is going to potentially save any customers that are using corn gluten a trip across the property. So just the take-home messages here, and I'm running a little short on time. I'm going to try to finish up here in the next 5 minutes to take a few minutes for questions. But it works a lot better than corn gluten. Efficacy on smooth crabgrass early post and pre-emerge up to the 4-leaf stage. Timing is important. 2 apps are better than 1. Shocker. No surprise there. There is an interval, and again, crabgrass control is another great claim. Again, this is on the liquid label as well. Okay, so on the liquid, if you are doing targeted applications, for example, I'm just thinking out loud here, you may want to do go ahead and do your targeted applications where you have a spotted clover or dandelions here and there. And then just do a perimeter application where you might see, you know, next to the driveway or next to the curb where you might see more crabgrass, or where guys are getting a little hungry on their trimming, on their edging, you know, where the crabgrass might be getting a little bit more prevalent. So that's an opportunity with the liquid as well as the granular. Really, we're just looking at same primary benefits, just 2 different formulas. And again, you're really getting 6-in-1 benefits from a single application. You're getting post-emergent broadleaf weed control, pre-emerge control of smooth crabgrass, turf green up, disease, moss, and algae control, 6-in-1. So anybody that really desires non-traditional, softer chemistry, Fiesta is a great product for them. You know, this really gives LCOs an opportunity to differentiate themselves from their competition, and also it's a revenue stream. It's an additional revenue stream for those LCOs that aren't necessarily already providing this service, providing an alternative to traditional chemistry service. Okay. Labor has always been an issue. The 6-in-1, you can reduce labor costs. I mean, this is I hear, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times, how much labor is an issue out there right now. This is just kind of a proposed thing. Round 1 and 55-degree soil temp. Round 2, 3 to 6 later. One final app in the fall. It's ready to use. Okay. Again, I won't go too much further, but this is ideal. This is an ideal product for those customers that desire non-traditional chemistry. Okay, that's BS. I'm going to talk a little bit about Antix Plus. I just took this picture last week because I use this as a perimeter treatment around my house for ants mostly. Okay, but I'll get to that in a sec. So Antix Plus, 1% iron phosphate, 0.07% spinosad, both fantastic active ingredients. This is OMRI listed. You have a PCO, LCO friendly label for pest control or lawn care, and you can use it anywhere outdoors, right? Just can't use it indoors. So you're going to get ants, earwigs, cutworms, slugs, and snails. Spinosad has a dual mode of action, both has contact and ingestion, and it gets both protein and carb feeders of ants. People and pets can enter the area after the bait is applied, no problem. So when I did this, I did an extra area right outside my front stoop. I had a ton of ants, I swear. And I should have taken a picture after the application and before, but I didn't. Hindsight. I put it out there, and the next day the ants were gone. There were the little brown ants. They're probably sugar ants, pavement ants maybe. But I didn't break it down into what species of ant. But anyway, they were gone. That's what was most important. Again, it is OMRI listed. Patented technology here. You get 2 active ingredients. Ideal for sensitive accounts, powerful enough for all accounts. And as I noted, this is my personal experience, works very fast. Okay, the last product I'd like to talk about is Ferox slug and snail bait. This is what it looks like. It is an extruded pellet. We call it a noodle bait. It's made like pasta, right? So it's a beautiful formulation. I'm telling you, this stuff holds up so great in wet conditions when slugs are most prevalent. This bad boy was on my pool deck about, I don't remember when it was, but that is a well-fed slug. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing more slugs this year than any time. And snails, mostly slugs, but snails too. In fact, I just took wasn't a big daddy like this guy, but I took another, I just saw one yesterday. It was probably about 1 inch long, a lot more slender, but this is what we're going after here, right? Nobody wants to see these all prevalent on their patio or on their steps or in their gardens. They're nasty kind of. I mean, they're cool, don't get me wrong. And fun fact, slugs have the most teeth of any planet on Earth, or of any animal on Earth. So they can munch through a lot in a short period of time. Probably because of my hosta. That's probably where they're coming from. But anyway, mode of action. So it's an ingested molluscicide. It's non-reversible. As soon as iron is toxic to slugs, and it's specific to slugs or mollusks, right? It's a molluscicide. So it kills by intoxication, not dehydration like other products, right? So it's non-reversible. Metaldehyde-based baits killed by dehydration. So it is a reversible mode of action. They're very sensitive to iron. They stop feeding. It's toxic to their gut. As soon as then they don't have to eat that whole pellet. They just need to nibble a little bit off of it. So they stop feeding immediately once that's ingested. I have found my own personal experience is that the only time you need to reapply is based on slug pressure, because these pellets hold up so beautifully in moist conditions, and you don't get any slime trails. 5+ years shelf life, rain-proof formula, superior activity, and doesn't harm earthworms. Can be used around pets and wildlife. Literally, I had a jug. This was a few years back, but I had a sample, not a jug, a sample of it on my desk, and my dog ate it. Shocker. Not a thing happened to her. Amazing. Not a thing happened to her. It was probably a couple ounces of it for sure. But it is a fantastic product. And really what it comes down to is this is not OMRI listed. This is a bioherbicide, just to be clear on that. Okay, I got done before 10. That was my goal. Thank you all for your time. Here's my contact information. Please go ahead and give me a call. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. I can support you guys in any way, shape, or form. That's my job. So thank you very much for your time.